Welcome to the NBA Triple Double Show powered by SportsMemo. I'm your host, Ronald Cabang from wagertalk.com at UCapper Sports on Twitter. I'll be joined by Moneyline Matt from SportsMemo. We'll be talking about game one of the NBA Finals between the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. Before we get into that game, though, I do want to talk about what we got going on over at SportsMemo and wagertalk.com. Over at WagerTalk, we have the last day for the summer celebration special over at Wager Talk. A 30-day all access pass, normally $2.99. A 90-day all access pass, normally $8.49. With the summer celebration special, you can lock in the entire summer for under $6 per day. That is a total of $5.79. Summer celebration special is $5.79. Offer is valid through midnight tonight. Like I said, today is the last day. Also, tomorrow, don't forget, Thursdays is Throwback Thursdays at wagertalk.com. All picks and packages 50% off. We got the free live odds pages on both sites as well. The deals page over at SportsMemo and Wager Talk has promos available for each capper that have them available. Cappers provide free picks and analysis on a daily basis along with their daily packages. Make sure you guys head over to sportsmemo.com to catch Matt, who's up over 17 units in the NBA the last 30 days. Also, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button before you go. Here on YouTube, it just helps our show here as we continue to close out the NBA season. With that said, let's get Matt up here with me. Matt, we always we always do our show. We start off being transparent here. We did get, or I did get the under in Game 7. I don't think you were on the show on Monday, but I took the under in Game 7. Luckily, I stayed off of the side because I was leaning towards the Celtics there. But yeah, the under hit, and that was good to go to close out that series. Now we're looking into Game 1 of the NBA Finals. But how's everything been going for you in the NBA?
Yeah, the last day or the last game, Game 7, I only hit Bam Adebayo. I went 1 for 2 in that day, so it wasn't the greatest day I've had. Did hit some series bets, some series future bets with Jason Tatum in terms of the top point scorer and top rebounder, so that was nice. At least got some money back that way. I do like a lot of these series future bets with like the top point scorer, assist, rebounder. This series not going to be much opportunity because, as we know, Nikola Jokic is most likely going to dominate the rebounds, going to dominate the assists. But I do think there's some value potentially in the top point scorer for this series. So, as always, excited to break it down with you. The Western Conference Finals and Eastern Conference Finals in comparison to the rest of the playoffs was not too good to me. So I'm ready to bounce back with the finals here,
Yeah, let's do
break
it.
this down with you, and ready to roll.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things heading into this game one, as we break it down, is a lot of people are mentioning the whole rest versus rust factor. I did
Yeah.
deep dive into the analytics with this. I know I touch on the SDQL stuff. One thing that I looked at in this game here was the rest versus rust factor, right? So one thing was the database that I look at goes back as far as 2003. So I looked at teams going into game one of a series with at least 7 days of rest versus a team with the 3 days of rest or more, or sorry, 3 days of rest or less. In those games, the team with more rest, 18-5 straight up, 78.3%, 16-7 against the spread, that's 69.6%. So I know rest versus rust in the regular season, it tends to be pretty bad for the team that has more rest. But in the playoffs, for some reason, it flips a little bit. I think they know what they have to do during this period of time when they're resting. I'm pretty sure, especially with it being Denver too, Miami has to go with short rest going into elevation. They got to get accustomed to that as well. There's going to be a lot of negative things here for the Miami Heat side. But if you even go further into it, and I went into 8 days of rest versus 3 days or less, 8-2 straight up, and against the spread, that's 80%. And the more rest that we see for that team that's more rested, the better the record goes. Because the last one I looked at was 9 days of rest versus 3 days of rest or less, 3-0 straight up and against the spread. So the percentages just keep getting higher there. But what do you think about that rest versus rust factor here? I mean, I kind of mentioned the numbers, but what are your thoughts on that, and how does this impact the series as you look at it for game one?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. There's a huge difference between the regular season and the postseason. Players are going to take it far more serious, obviously, in the postseason. And we've seen how some of these players or teams, coaches, whatever it may be, how they act in the regular season. When you're coming in short rested, a lot of the time these players or coaches will give their guys less minutes. They're going to give less effort, things like that. In the playoffs, that's window. These guys are giving max effort. They're going to get max minutes. Key guys like Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, you're most likely going to see 40 plus minutes. And, to your point with this Denver Nuggets team, they've just been so consistent, and they've been by far, to me, the most impressive team throughout the NBA playoffs. Even when
Yeah.
they've lost games, they haven't lost a single game by double digits, which still means they're producing on offense. They're still gelling very well. They're still in the games, giving max effort. Sometimes you just run into a hot team where guys aren't missing shots, and, that happens. But it doesn't mean the Nuggets have played bad basketball. Sometimes you play good and you still lose. So for me, if there's any team I'm going to trust, even with extended rest, it's going to be this Denver Nuggets team, because I think they are so dialed in here. Nikola Jokic is just playing unbelievable basketball. We've talked about this throughout the entirety of the playoffs with Nikola Jokic, how he is easily the best player throughout the NBA playoffs. And, Jamal Murray's coming off a 32.5 point per game series against the Los Angeles Lakers. If we got some hot players coming into this series, KCP was balling, Michael Porter Jr. was balling, Aaron Gordon playing his defense, doing his thing. So it's really, Bruce Brown, it's really tough not to love this Nuggets team at this point in time. So for me, I don't see much rust from the Nuggets. And, it's a higher spread, stuff like that. But you bring up a great point with the elevation. I think that's something people forget very often with the elevation in Denver. So a lot of the signs are pointing to the Nuggets here for me with game one. So I would be with you 100%.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like just from a matchup perspective, I was talking to you right before the show about this, but the Heat have lost and failed to cover 6 straight games versus the Nuggets, and then that also includes, if you go back a little bit further, they lost nine. They lost and failed to cover 9 of the last 10 matchups. I think it goes back to 2018 or 2019. The one game that the Heat won during that 10 game time frame was the one time they matched up in the bubble. During the COVID year. So just from a matchup perspective, right? Like it seems like the Nuggets got that covered. I'm not saying the Nuggets are going to sweep, right? Because Miami in the playoffs have been a different monster. The other thing too, this is the reason why. So I have a 5% play on this game, but it isn't the spread, because of this reason. A lot of things are pointing towards the Nuggets on the full game spread, but my biggest play is not on the spread because the Heat are so good in game ones of playoff series. If you go back to 2015 with Spo being, Spo's been the coach for them since what, 2008, I think, 2009, around there. But if you go back to 2015 in the playoffs, in game one of playoff series, Heat are 11-3 straight up, 12-2 against the spread in game ones. And that includes winning and covering in 6 straight games, game ones dating back to last season. So they won and covered every single game one they played last year, and so far this postseason as well. So it's really tough to go against Coach Spo and how they make their adjustments. But one way to do it is possibly look at it from a first half versus second half perspective. Because if we talked about the rest versus rust, right? We talked about having to travel to elevation in Denver. I would probably look. I'll talk about this in the best bet section too, but maybe look towards the Denver Nuggets early to avoid some of those halftime adjustments that's Spo's so good at. But what are your thoughts on kind of splitting it that way, or do you think that the Nuggets kind of just dominate through with so much advantage on the rest?
No, so for me, we've talked about this kind of throughout the playoffs, and anytime I see a number almost like higher than 5.5 for the away team or a team like the Miami Heat, I like to side with that team because that's a lot of points in the playoffs. There's a lot to play for. This is a very well-coached team with the Miami Heat, like you said, and Jimmy Butler is one of those guys who has proven that he single-handedly can keep the Heat in games, and when you're getting 8 points, that's numerous possessions. So you have some room to even let the game get away from you a little bit, and you can make a comeback, things like that. You can backdoor cover. A lot of things are open when you get an 8-point spread like that. For me, I'm with you. I don't have a side play on this game. I do have a total play. I do have a lot of player props that I'm looking at. I think there's a lot of mismatches in this series that you can potentially take advantage of. But for me, anytime I see an 8-point spread, with the Miami Heat, at this point in time, it is almost seeming disrespectful because this Heat team has not only been covering these +8 spreads, they've been winning these games outright. And I understand that the Denver Nuggets are definitely a different animal in comparison to that of the Boston Celtics or that of the New York Knicks, but still 8 points is 8 points. And when you have a team that is as well coached as that with Eric Spoelstra, when you have a player like Jimmy Butler, and when you have guys who are just making clutch shots like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin playing unbelievable basketball at this point in time. But these guys are making very clutch shots. It's tough for me to see that just fading away when they've done this all playoffs long. And yes, the Heat have shown that they can get blown out, but it's typically not game one, like you said. So for me, if I were to go aside, it would actually be with the Miami Heat. But like you, I also have a total play.
I like it. Let's actually go. You're talking about a couple of key players there. So let's talk about player props now. I mean, Caleb Martin, obviously, he picked it up in that series there against Boston. Obviously, he's probably got a lot of momentum on his side right now. But from a prop perspective, doesn't that mean that his numbers probably can get a little bit inflated? I think I've seen his points prop up to 16.5, I believe. I think it was that I saw. So that kind of means that we should be able to see some value on some other players, right? Because I think other than the series with the Bucks, Jimmy pretty much did it all in that series. In the series against New York, there was Max Strus stepped up, right? And then in the last series, you saw Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin. Like, do you think we can go back to Max Strus? Because I've seen his point prop at like 9.5. So now, what I mean? Like, we're gonna have to see some adjustments somewhere. And if Denver looks back at this previous series against Celtics, they're like, we got to take care of Vincent and Martin, right? Not just Jimmy Butler. That's going to open it up for Strus, I feel like, right? Wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd be with you. I would definitely like the look of Max Strus. One thing that I kind of want to see is maybe how Spoelstra fits Tyler Herro back into that lineup, who loses minutes, things like that. So that is one thing that I'm definitely keeping in mind. Obviously, with Jimmy Butler's going to get Aaron Gordon, most likely. So he's going to get that number one defender. And you're going to have to look at those guys who can trickle down. I actually do believe, I haven't played anything like this yet, but I actually do believe that we might see a good showing in Game 1 from Bam Adebayo. He had such a bad showing in Game 7. He struggled so hard towards the end of the series. And one thing with Nikola Jokic, he does play somewhat of a drop defense. He plays very soft in terms of getting up in your shot. He doesn't foul all that often. So Bam Adebayo's mid-range jumper is definitely going to be there. He's going to have to be a big rebounder in this series, things like that. So Bam would definitely be somewhere I would be looking. But to your point as well, with Max Strus, with Gabe Vincent, for me, I understand Caleb Martin has been balling and, he's been playing incredibly consistent basketball as well. But when you get anywhere into that 15.5, 16.5 vicinity, for someone like Caleb, and he's playing great, but that's just a little high for me. I would much rather, like you said, go to a Max Strus, whose line might be at a 9.5, or a Gabe Vincent. Gabe Vincent is generally around an 11.5, 12.5 range. So those are some guys that I would definitely be looking at here. I actually think the guy who might get phased out of the lineup is going to be Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson has been picking up probably around 20 minutes, and I think those minutes might go to Herro, and then maybe they'll subtract a couple minutes from maybe Strus, Vincent, somewhere along those lines, and give those back to Tyler. But you also got to proceed with caution. When you're adding a player back into a lineup like that, and you've been playing that good, you've been upsetting teams, you've been playing consistent basketball, you got to be careful. So that is one thing with the Heat player props. I'm more so, I guess, proceeding with caution here, just because I need to see how this lineup distribution is going to be. Who's going to get the minutes allocated where, and then kind of go from there. So in Game 1, I'm more so on Nuggets props, I would actually say.
Yeah, the other thing too, like I know you mentioned Tyler Herro, but I think I think his target is possibly game 3. So we still got game 1 and game
Okay.
2 with a similar rotation, and that's not even like for sure. Like we don't know if Harrell's going to come back for game 3 or not. But I mean,
True.
at least he has a target date, right? So game 1 and game 2 in Denver, probably most likely going to be without him. I can only look towards guys like Strus or even Gabe Vincent because his number came down to 12.5
Yeah.
as well. It's just the fact that obviously Caleb Martin's going to be a big impact here, just because of the momentum he's picked up heading into this finals. But his numbers has been a little bit like inflated, so I want to stay away from that. The other thing too, we talked about Jokic obviously being the guy that over in Denver. This is the reason why line shopping is so important, right? Because you mentioned triple double for Jokic was it plus 100 or minus
Minus
105,
105.
and I
Yep.
minus 105, and I saw it for minus 140. So being able to line shop is super important because that's a 40 cent difference there, or 35 cent difference there, and then also if you have like one of those prop builders, you can do 20-10-10, because one thing that I saw in Jokic's matchup against Miami, he's gotten a triple double in 3 out of the last 5 matchups. So and he was only averaging around 33-32 minutes per game in those matchups against the Heat. And so he's been able to get a triple double. I think the other 2 that he didn't hit the triple double, he missed by either 1 assist or 2 assists, if I'm not mistaken. So it was also really close. So if you want to build it out, you can also get plus money at the 20-10-10 line. If you because I can't see Jokic not getting 20 points here. So 20-10-10, if you build it yourself at plus money, might be a solid look as well if you want to do that from a prop perspective. What are your thoughts on that? And also, obviously Jokic is going to be dominant, right, from the assists and the rebounds aspect. Obviously points, he'll be there too, but do you feel like Jamal Murray has a chance to lead the Denver Nuggets with points in this series?
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you bring that up because that was one of my segments on Sports Memo today yesterday, and the whole
Gotcha.
thing was about Jamal Murray's top point scorer. And I think it's great value because Jamal Murray is at plus 270, or was yesterday, to be the top point scorer. Jimmy Butler was plus 170, and then Nikola Jokic was plus 110. And there's no doubt I see Jokic having a huge game at some point. I think he can have a 40-point game. Bam just gives up a ton of size to him. And the thing is, too, that it actually makes me somewhat pivot towards Murray a little bit is because he has so much size that I feel like they're going to have to do something. Spoelstra is going to have to throw traps. They're going to have to throw doubles. They're going to have to do something to slow him down, or they're going to lose this series, before it even gets started. Jokic is just absolutely going to dominate. And that's also why I like Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray got hot at the perfect time. He averaged 32.5 points per game against the Los Angeles Lakers. I believe he had 15. He was 15 for 35 in terms of 3 points, 3-point shots made, I should say. And the last game he went 0 for 4. So that shows you how streaky he can be. He had 15 3-point makes in the first 3 games. Now he's going against the Miami Heat and will potentially be lined up with Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, a lot of the time. Matchups that he should be able to take advantage of. And so for me, I think it really is good value. He averages the most shots on the team as well, so you're going to get consistent shots from Jamal Murray. And if they're from behind the arc, good chance that he's been hot. He's been hitting those at around a 47% rate. So for me, I love the look of Jamal Murray. Another one that I like is the top 3-point made shots throughout the entire series. I think Jamal Murray has very good odds on that one as well. So I'm with you. I think getting around plus 250 value for someone who just averaged 32.5 points per game against the Los Angeles Lakers, it's a pretty good bet.
Yeah, if you think about it too, like especially in the first, I think game 2 and game 3 for the most part, you could see Jokic was okay with allowing Murray to shoot so many times. So he was just being a distributor, doing what he needed to do to get the win for the team. And that's what's so good about Jokic is he doesn't have to dominate the ball as far as usage shooting the ball, right? He can shoot the ball like 12 times and still score 20 some points. You know what I mean? Like as long as he's getting the rebounds and providing the distribution and getting the win for the most part for the Nuggets, there is a chance that I could see Murray getting the point, top point scorer for the series, but especially on the Denver side. But on the Miami side, it has to be Jimmy, right? There's no other way that could be anyone else leading the points for that side. But yeah, there's a lot to look at here as far as matchups, man. One thing that I was thinking about too on the Miami side, the reason why I was kind of looking towards Strus was I feel like he might draw MPJ, because
Yeah.
the way that Caleb Martin played in the last series, if he ends up starting game one and game two, he might get someone like Caldwell Pope on him,
Yeah.
who's a better defender in my opinion, right? So that's why I was kind of leaning towards Strus. What do you think about that from a matchup perspective? Who do you think is going to draw MPJ, who's probably the worst defender on the Denver Nuggets starting
Yeah.
lineup, right?
No, that's a great question because I've been thinking about that all morning actually because it just doesn't make sense because MPJ is 6'10". So I'm sitting here like kind of boggling my mind. What lineup is Eric Spoelstra going to come out with? Because he's been
Yeah.
running Caleb Martin at the 4. Caleb Martin is 6'5". Jimmy Butler is 6'7", and then we have Max Strus, who's also 6'5". So it's like, who is going to match up with 6'10" Michael Porter Jr.? That's why I do like Michael Porter Jr. in this series. I think he has a big advantage. As we know, MPJ loves to just elevate and shoot over people. So
Yeah.
he's going to be drooling over this matchup, and it kind of makes me wonder, is Kevin Love going to get a little more playing
I was
time?
just gonna say that, but he's not
Yeah,
laterally. He can't move laterally with MPJ either.
exactly.
So it's a matchup thing there. It's gonna be tough,
And,
man. This is gonna be
and
tough.
that's the thing. Like, there's so many mismatches in this series, and that's why you talked about Jokic triple double at -105. I'll be honest with everyone. If you're tuning into the show, I'm probably going to run that every single game. Every game.
Mm.
There's really no reason not to. There is that I think is a clear mismatch is how Nikola Jokic has been shooting. So that means Bam Adebayo needs to come out and meet him at that 3-point line, which is incredibly difficult because Jokic is potentially the best passer in the NBA at this point in time. So then you're going to get slashers to the basket. You're going to get open 3-point shots. When you have that motion offense and you have someone like Jokic and a center like Bam needs to get away from the basket, that's going to be troublesome. And then you can't really run a zone either because you have a 7-footer who can pick you apart with his passing. So, like, any
Yeah,
way I think about this series, it's trouble for the Heat the way I see it.
man. Yeah, the more we talk about it too, like you can even see a mismatch at Gordon at the dunker role too, because like you said, if Jokic pulls out, right, and who's gonna be the rim protector, right? There is no
Exactly.
one else. There's nobody else. So you could see Aaron Gordon down there in the post, or in the dunker roll, and just, man, this is gonna be tough for Miami. I don't know what to think
Yeah.
anymore.
Because you
Yeah,
think
this is gonna be
Butler's going to
tough.
guard Murray? Butler probably has to guard Murray, right?
If that happens, yeah, then if that happens, I don't know about Murray being the top point scorer. Then, if that
Yeah.
happens, but
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know, man. This is we're gonna have to see how game one goes as far as a
I know.
matchup
That's what
perspective.
I'm saying. I'm so excited for it, dude. I just get geeked. That's why, like, I was just happy to see that Celtics and Heat series live on a little bit more, so we could watch more basketball and talk more about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm just geeked for this series. I think game one is going to tell us a lot because there are a lot of lineup question marks right now. What are they going to run? I would assume Caleb Martin stays in that starting lineup, but do they want to give up that much height? I don't know. So it is. You got to kind of see game one. And I think there's going to be a lot of chess moves in this series as well. Eric Spoelstra is going to be switching things up. He's
yeah.
going to be running different looks, different defenses. One game, Jokic might get trapped every time he touches the ball. The next time it could be polar opposite. So I think that's one thing. I wouldn't. If you have a prop that you like, I would be careful running it like numerous times, other than like a Jokic triple double because it's such a mismatch. Just because I do think that Spoelstra's going to run so many different looks. I think triple double's a
Yeah.
little different because his height is just can beat so many things, and you're going to get that 10 points. The biggest thing is always that 10 assists. Are the other guys going to make the shots to get that 10 assists? And just the way
Hmm.
that Jamal Murray's been playing, KCP been knocking it down, MPJ, Bruce Brown. We barely mentioned Bruce Brown coming off the bench. He's been one of the hottest guys too. So at this point in time, those assists look like they're pretty viable, especially with Bam
Yeah.
Adebayo coming out, things like that. So that's really one of my favorite looks this series. Everything else, I think you got to kind of wait and let it play out and see what's going on with game one. Other than MPJ, I actually think MPJ is a big mismatch in this series. It just depends what MPJ you're going to get.
Yeah, maybe a 3-point prop look towards
Yeah,
MPJ too. He might be sitting on the side over there in the corner,
yeah.
just waiting for the ball to come to
Oh, he's
him.
going to be
Um,
chilling in that corner.
yeah, exactly. Oh man, I love it. I think we got opportunity to make a lot of money in this series here. You know what? Let's get to the best bet section here. I'll actually start first here. Like I said earlier, I do have a 5% play on this game, but I don't like to give out plays that I don't that aren't premium plays on this show. So I'm gonna this is one I just gave out this morning. Nuggets first half -5. This is my best bet for today's show. Also, a smaller premium play, not the 5% play, but a smaller premium play here for my clients. A lot of trends I mentioned earlier regarding rest versus rust, like I said, pointed towards the Nuggets on the full game. But for the most part, a lot of that damage is being done early on in the game, in the first half specifically. In game one of a series, plus 6.8 point average first half margin for teams with at least 7 days of rest versus a team with 3 days of rest or less. And then if we keep going up to 8 days of rest versus 3 days, 6.9, and then 9 days of rest versus 3 days of rest or less, 9+9.7. Focusing on that first half also, it gives me a chance to avoid the Heat halftime adjustments, which obviously Coach Spo and the Heat are so good at, and we've seen that throughout the whole playoffs. Also adjusting to elevation in Colorado in a short period of time. I mentioned how the Heat, they've lost and failed to cover against the Nuggets in 9 of the last 10 meetings. 6 of those 10 games were in Denver. In the first half of those games in Denver, the Heat on average were down 7.6 points at halftime. So I can definitely see the Nuggets here up at least six points around there. The line here -5 is pretty tight there, but for the most part, I think it's going to be tough with not only just the travel situation, getting accustomed to the elevation, and also fatigue, man, just fatigue overall coming off of a game 7. I think the Nuggets are going to try to take advantage of that early. So -5 is my best bet for today's show in the first half. Like I said, it's going to be a premium play, but it's not my 5% play, which I do have up and available over at wagertalk.com. I do like that a little bit more here. And let's go to you, Matt. What do you got going on over at Sports Memo, and what is your top play for today's show?
Yeah, guys, I actually already have 4 plays loaded over at Sports Memo. One is a series future bet, which I did talk about that bet on the show. So if you heard that, that's one of them that I got as well. But for today, this is actually a premium play as well, and this is going to be a player prop. Like I was telling you, I feel like there are some spots we can take advantage of, and I think Michael Porter Jr. is one of them. So I have Michael Porter Jr. over 15.5 points, and here is why. Actually took kind of a deep dive into this one because when I took a look at that Miami Heat lineup, kind of what I've been talking about, or Ron and I have been talking about, it's how small they are. Caleb Martin, 6'5", Jimmy Bucket, 6'7", Max Strus, 6'5", Gabe Vincent, I'm really not sure, but I'd guess 6'1". So again, a pretty small lineup. And then you have Michael Porter Jr., who is 6'10", shooting from the outside at that small forward position. Okay, and then you take a look at the Miami Heat. What position have they been the worst against throughout the entire season? It's been the small forward position, and they're actually 3rd worst throughout the entire NBA. They're giving up 23.74 points per game to the small forward, and the key factor here is that they've been giving up 3.08 three-point makes to the small forward position on average per game. So again, that's Michael Porter Jr.'s specialty. Ron and I were already talking about how MPJ is going to be setting up a tent. He's going to be hanging in that corner, and he is going to be ready for Nikola Jokic to hit him with that pass. And again, going back to Nikola Jokic has such a mismatch against Bam Adebayo that he's going to be able to exploit. He's going to be able to back him down, and there's no one, maybe in the history of basketball, who is better at passing out of that post position while you're backing someone down and really just hitting someone right in the numbers so they can elevate into their shot. And I think that's going to be Michael Porter Jr. And another thing, too, he's hit this in 3 out of his last 4 games against the Miami Heat, playing good basketball right now. I think this team as a whole is playing very confident basketball. And if Michael Porter Jr. gets going, if you see that guy, we say this every time with MPJ. If you see him make his first 2 shots, he's going to hit it. If you see him miss his first 2 shots, it's looking a little gloomy, and you might want to maybe take an alternative under real quick or something like that. But here, I really do like MPJ. I think everything kind of leads to him having a good series here. I even like Ron's idea of maybe taking him for the most 3-point makes throughout the series, because the more I think about it, and even Ron and I breaking this down, it really makes me believe that Jimmy Butler might be on Jamal Murray. It just makes sense. It seems like they would want to take away, try maybe the number one scoring option, stuff like that. So that means MPJ is getting Strus, he's getting Caleb Martin, or maybe even K Love, which all of those are mismatches. And if there's one thing that he specializes in, it's driving and elevating, or just catching and elevating. And if you have that room to elevate against someone that much smaller than you, I'm going to think you're going to be pretty prone to hitting those shots. He's shooting 46% from the field in the playoffs. He's shooting 41% from three. I think odds are pretty good, so I'm with MPJ over 15.5 points in this spot.
I like it. I like that a lot. I think I'm gonna tell you on that one. We kind of just broke it down as far as like that last part that we talked about. I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm probably gonna tell you on that prop play there, guys. Man, that I think we did a good job breaking down that game one for overall perspective, man. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, like I said, guys, this is the end of the show, guys. We talked about the best bets. We broke down game one of the series. Once again, make sure you guys head over to sportsmemo.com. Find Matt over there. Grab his plays, his packages, all available over there. He's up over 17 units the last 30 days. My stuff is over at wagertalk.com. We got WNBA plays. I'm currently number one in WNBA profit over at wagertalk.com. NBA is doing well. MLB will start to catch up there. I'm kind of focusing in on the WNBA and closing out the NBA strong here. Also, make sure you guys check out all the amazing content, the deals that we have going on over on both sites. Like I said earlier, there's that summer celebration package at Wager Talk. That is today. Today's the last day to do it. I think it was $579 for the whole summer. If you compare that to $299 for just 30 days, that's a huge savings there. And then I think that was it. Next show will be on Wednesday. I believe it's going to be myself, Matt, and Jeff Michaels, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday, same time on this same channel. Till then, guys, good luck with our reaction. Peace.